BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. All right, and welcome to our book discussion on The Myth of the Zodiac Killer by Thomas Henry Horan. But you'll see that there is no number on this one. I would like to say that some people have been following along with the extended book discussion that we've been doing on The Myth of the Zodiac Killer, and this will count as part 6 in that series. But I also wanted this one to be included in a type of standalone episode, if you will, something that people could listen to that is not completely connected to the series, because in part 5 I said that in this one we were going to be doing some skeptical challenges to the Zodiac Killer hoax theory. That is, that this person known as the Zodiac Killer never existed, and that this was a setup where someone was writing letters, taking credit for murders that he did not commit. Letters and cryptograms were also composed. But that means the murders in 1968 and 1969 were not done by one person. They were done in an unconnected way, and somebody wrote this series of letters connecting them together and making it appear that there was this one serial killer going around murdering people, and in fact it was a myth. Now, I would like to begin with some of the comments from the previous episode, because as I said, this is going to be both part of the book discussion and a standalone. So just to go with some comments that people have been leaving on the previous Zodiac Killer uploads, I would like to look at our first one from NKB Guy, who says that he has something to say about the Lake Berryessa stabbing on September 27th of 1969. That's the only time that the Zodiac Killer is wearing the hood, the only time the victims were killed by knife, the only time that the Zodiac wrote a message on the car door, the only time that the victims were hog-tied, the only time that the killer had an extended conversation with the victims. But what we should say is that with the Paul Stine murder on Presidio Heights on October 11th of 69, it's most likely that the Zodiac had a conversation with Paul Stine, the taxi driver that was murdered, because he was in a taxi cab with him. However, those words are almost not going to be able to be discovered. So NKB Guy says, I also believe that Lake Berryessa was a copycat attack, and that's why the Zodiac never mentioned that crime. He took credit for crimes that he almost positively didn't do, but he wouldn't even mention Lake Berryessa, let alone take credit for it. I also think that's why he took part in the cab driver's murder, and took a piece of the cab driver's shirt, so he could say, "See, here's proof that it's actually me." So if there were more copycats around, that he could prove that it was him, and there wasn't any piece of physical evidence mailed in from the scene. All right, so I think that you can get the idea from that. He's saying that it's possible that Lake Berryessa was a copycat, and the reason why there are all these differences with the Stein murder is the Zodiac wanted to obtain proof that he was indeed the murderer, whereas at Lake Berryessa, it is possible that somebody learned about the Zodiac Killer symbol from the newspapers, because that's the third incident in Zodiac activity, and things had been published in the paper, including the Zodiac symbol, which was published August 4th, 1969, in the Vallejo Times-Herald, on the front page, I believe. But right now, what I would like to do is to go on to our next comment, which is going to go in the absolute opposite direction, and that comes to us from Super Strike 9, who says, I'm open to the hoax theory. If the letter writer committed any of the murders, I think that Lake Berryessa is the best bet. I'm also open to one person doing all of the killings and writing the letters. I admit I don't know who committed the murders and wrote the letters. And that's really at the place where I was in 2019 when I began to notice all of the abnormalities about the Zodiac Killer mystery, all of the inconsistencies. But I also have to commend Super Strike for saying, I have never seen anything to indicate that it is 100% certain that one person did not commit all of these murders, and we'll see why in the skeptical alternative section. But this comment goes in the exact opposite direction, saying if any of the crimes were genuine, it would be Lake Berryessa, because a big difference is there isn't just a letter taking credit for the incidents. There is a symbol that is written on the car door that is the Zodiac symbol, and the Zodiac was seen wearing the costume, once again with the Zodiac symbol on it. While it is true, to the best of our knowledge, this person did not address Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Ann Shepard as the Zodiac Killer and saying, hey, I'm the Zodiac, this is the Zodiac speaking. There was a definitive attempt to create the Zodiac symbol at the scene of the crime. So which one do you agree with? Do you think that Lake Berryessa was genuine Zodiac activity, or do you think that Lake Berryessa was not genuine Zodiac activity? But a big thank you to you guys who have left those comments there. And our next one is going to come to us from Richard Grenell, who has something to say about a claim that we made in part 5 about the Stein shooting. Now, I don't mean to be too redundant to anybody who has heard part 5, but I would like to read a passage that has been written by Thomas Henry Horn here, because I don't think that we can have a proper response to this without reading the paragraph first, and that is questioning the descriptions of the shooter after the Stein shooting on October 11th of 1969. The description from Armin Pellisetti's report, which Robert Graysmith clearly had a copy of, follows is: the suspect was early 40s, 5'8", heavy build, reddish blonde, crew cut hair, wearing glasses and dark brown trousers, dark, maybe navy blue or black, parka jacket, and dark shoes. And this description is partly based on the description that was given of the man that they saw walking north on Maple. But according to the witnesses at the scene of the crime, the killer was 25 to 30 years old, reddish brown hair, crew cut, heavy rim glasses, navy blue or black jacket, and this blonde-haired man in his early 40s cannot have been the killer, a fact that Graysmith not only ignores but lies about when he is discussing the 2 bulletins by the SFPD. Okay, so that is from chapter 6 of the book The Myth of the Zodiac Killer. And Richard Grinnell has written in saying that he would like to challenge that statement by saying, no eyewitnesses at Presidio ever described the killer as being 25 to 30 years old. This was the age attributed to the first sketch. The 3 teenagers never described that suspect as 25 to 30 years old. Only the October 13th, 1969 police sketch did. Their account was comprehensively detailed in the police report, countersigned by Armin Pellisetti on October 12th of 1969. Their viewing of the suspect, last seen walking north on Cherry Street from Washington Street, was the only eyewitness testimony in the police report, and therefore the suspect description on page 2 could only have been derived from them. It stated that the man was in his early 40s. It couldn't have been from the other 2 sets of eyewitnesses because the police report clearly states that the suspect was last seen walking north on Cherry Street from Washington Street. The other eyewitnesses viewed the suspect after Cherry Street. So, as we see here, someone has a big challenge to a bold claim that was made by Thomas Henry Horn. Thank you to Richard Grinnell for that comment there. And we will keep exploring some of these things on the channel. And I would always invite all you guys to like and subscribe so you can follow along with any of these discussions. And we will try to get some more solid answers. But it appears we have some conflicting things and some disputes that we would like to go through. But that's the entire purpose of this episode here, because I think that Richard's comment is a great segue into the skeptical challenges to the Zodiac Killer hoax theory and the myth of the Zodiac Killer response, because it's talking all about how we want a definitive answer. We want definite answers. And you can see that there's at a certain point when you can't just say, I'm going to go with the theory that sounds the best to me. I hope that we would all accept the results, no matter what it would be, because in the world of true crime, it would be about getting the truth and finding a certain answer. Who committed these murders in 1968 and 69? Who wrote the letters? Who wrote the ciphers? What are the meanings of the ciphers? And people really want to try and answer those questions. And it's not so much about opinion or belief, it's about the actual narrative that took place in a historical sense. Is this really what happened? That some guy wrote some letters in 1969, as well as mailing in ciphers, taking credit for murders that he did not commit to create this myth of the Zodiac Killer? Firstly, I would like to say that, of course, Thomas Henry Horn's suspect for writing the letters is an individual named Harold K. Snook, more famously known as Hal Snook, and that he also accuses Robert Graysmith of a host of variety of issues, particularly associated with the disinfo that he spread in his 1986 book Zodiac, as well as possibly being an active participant in this mystery. But if we want to provide some skeptical challenges, I would like to share something that we discussed in our recent interview with Mark Hewitt on the channel. And when I asked him about the Zodiac Killer hoax theory, his response was that what Thomas Henry Horn is doing is just saying that the mystery is unsolved. We do not have all the answers. We do not have all all the certain pieces put in place. So he is just adding in different people and attributing the different roles in the Zodiac Killer mystery to different people, saying, well, okay, maybe there wasn't the same shooter at Lake Herman Road as Blue Rock Springs, and maybe there wasn't the same perpetrator at Lake Berryessa as Blue Rock Springs, and maybe there wasn't the same perpetrator at Presidio Heights as Lake Berryessa. He's just saying, okay, well, it wasn't one person, there actually was a different person that committed each one of the murders. Oh, yeah, and a different person also wrote the letters, and a different person wrote the ciphers, and a different person made the phone calls, and possibly a different person even wrote the message on the car door at Lake Berryessa. I mean, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger because he is saying that we do not have answers to this, so, well, why not two instead of one? Why not three instead of two? Why not four instead of three? And why not five instead of four people who are involved with this? And when I did my first response to the Great Zodiac Killer Hoax of 1986, I really was quite shocked about how there were so many people that were included into this theory. And somebody left a comment once asking me the question saying, why do you insist that the Zodiac Killer Hoax theory has to have been committed or perpetrated by an enormous amount of people? My simple response was, I don't necessarily think that. I see very easily how one person could have set up something like this. I mean, not necessarily the Zodiac Killer mystery, but one person can write letters taking credit for crimes that he did not commit. But also, even if you just had three people involved with this, one person writing the letters, one person writing the ciphers, and then one person causing a little bit of disinfo and destroying the crime scenes, more or less, but that's a very specific theory, heavily connected to Lake Berryessa, mind you, and I don't even really want to speculate too much about that, because that's more about justifying the Zodiac hoax theory, and I said we would provide some skeptical alternatives. So, is that really just what's happening here? That Thomas Henry Horan is just attributing the different roles in the Zodiac Killer mystery to a group of people, to different people. Everybody gets a task. Hal Snook wrote the letters. Maybe Graysmith wrote the ciphers. The first murder was committed by person A. The second murder was committed by person B, and so on. He's just adding in people to take on different roles. And Drew Beeson provided a similar response to that by saying that the Zodiac Killer hoax theory falls apart under its own weight because it has to become bigger and bigger to justify all of the reasons why. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be. Thomas Henry Horan would like to present it that way, and Horan doesn't seem to budge too much on any of these claims in response. He simply says that, well, this is what happened, and there were many people who would have been involved with this. Now, if we can look at this in a different direction, I would like to address the name hoax because I think it's important for a certain reason. When we have the Zodiac Killer hoax theory, I mean, we are talking about real murders. Real murders did happen in 1968 and 69. Well, a response that was provided by Michael Butterfield was that if everything that Thomas Henry Horn says is true about Hal Snook, then he would be guilty of things such as conspiracy to commit murder or obstruction of justice or perhaps a host of other legal issues, and that this is not really the Zodiac Killer hoax theory. And we say conspiracy to commit murder. I mean, it's possible that Hal Snook orchestrated the murder of Cecilia Shepard, or Thomas Henry Horn at one point has at least talked about the possibility that Hal Snook could have had insider access to what was happening at Lake Berryessa, and if he had his associate Dennis Land, whom he seemed to have known personally, commit the Lake Berryessa stabbing, then he would be guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. So then, in that instance, I mean, if on that alone, this is not the Zodiac Killer hoax theory. This is the Zodiac co-conspirator theory. And Evan from Texas wrote a comment once saying something similar, saying it's not really the Zodiac hoax; it's more like the Zodiac fraud of 1969. But if we want to talk about more things about the crime scenes and the evidence, I have to say that most people who go after the Zodiac Killer hoax theory almost always use things like the psychological markers. They use empirical principles, much as we said about the comments from Mark Hewitt and Drew Beeson when they were saying that, okay, it doesn't appear that this was actually done by a group of people. It appears that this is done by one person, as opposed to using all the pieces of the physical evidence, because I mean, it really depends on what you would like to say because it was always possible that one person committed these crimes. I mean, especially when you have someone who was very thoughtful and very good at planning and saying things that are super, super easy to think about. I'm not going to wear the same type of shoes when I go out and commit these crimes. I'm not going to use the same firearm. I'm not going to do anything in the same way because if I keep doing crimes in the same way, eventually somebody is going to figure it out. And this person is just trying to create this type of image in which it's meant to be confusing on purpose because why not? Well, if it's not confusing, then he's going to get caught. And something that we need to say about this is also a response to the Zodiac hoax theory, a skeptical challenge that I hear almost never talked about. But I have to confess, it's not my own theory because yeah, I have to give a shout out to YouTube user Jamie Hendrickson, who wrote into the channel once saying that if anything, Thomas Henry Horn has just offered Hal Snook as his Zodiac killer suspect. And I believe the exact phrasing of that was, if anything, Thomas Henry Horn has just offered Hal Snook as the Zodiac killer. And we did an upload about this on the channel called Zodiac Killer Hal Snook as a Suspect. I would invite you guys to check that one out as well. And once again, you can always hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And if you're going to look at this possibility, Hal Snook as the Zodiac Killer, well, that would erase a lot of the need for many of the aspects of the hoax theory. And number one, that would mean that it wasn't a hoax. It wouldn't mean that everything that Thomas Henry Horn said was incorrect. In fact, a lot of it would be true, particularly Hal Snook writing the letters. But if you're going to say that he was involved with a larger role of the murders. I mean, Thomas Henry Horn does offer the possibility that Hal Snook would have been the shooter at Presidio Heights, but Thomas Horn insists, as you heard from the beginning when we were talking about Richard Grinnell's comment, that Thomas Horn insists that the shooter was around 25 to 30 years old. Hal Snook would have been 44 years old in 1969, so that actually sounds like he's more in line with Graysmith's definition, or Graysmith's description of the shooter. And as you heard, that Richard Grinnell also seems to be supporting that definition that the person was seen around 40 years old with the short blonde crew cut. Okay, I mean, that's like another thing that is going that way. But if Hal Snook had a much larger role in committing these murders, then he is the Zodiac killer, and that's not a hoax at all. And Hal Snook was someone who was a Napa County deputy. He was in the narcotics division, and he also would have had insider access to what was going on with different departments, as well as also relationships with other police officers. And here are some possibilities that have been talked about, and I've learned about this stuff from Thomas Henry Horn. This is the information that he has shared. Number one, it's possible that David Faraday was a confidential informant. I mean, that's not proven, but it's possible. No one really knows why David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were in the parking lot at Lake Herman Road when they were murdered. People have theories, but it appears that it is something that is disputed. Number two, it's possible that Darlene Ferrin was a confidential informant. Are you seeing any pattern there? I mean, Hal Snook could have showed up early to these incidents where he was expecting confidential informants to have been and betrayed the confidential informants, and then knowing that these were committed in high crime areas, the crime scenes would have been compromised, the evidence would have been tampered. People are going to show up leaving footprints, and then they're going to be leaving fingerprints behind because they're not expecting to find any dead bodies or anything like that. And then they're just going to get out of there. Hey, the person I was going to meet was murdered, and I'm a criminal, so I'm going to get as far away from the crime scene as possible. And of course, I'm not going to alert the authorities because then they'll throw me in jail for something else. And with the Stein shooting, you can see that pattern happening just as easily. Looking at Paul Stein being murdered in where? An area that is a hotspot of criminal activity, particularly taxi cab robberies. And in that instance, the wallet was stolen. I believe Paul Stein's keys were also taken, and I'm certain, though, that, well, I shouldn't say certain, but I think it's highly likely that the piece of shirt was removed at the crime scene, and then that was mailed in. And, well, as we heard in that one comment there, to show that the Zodiac wanted to make it very, very obvious that he committed that crime. But also, there could be explanations that are provided for the differences in the Zodiac killer mystery about why the killer deviated from his pattern at Lake Berryessa instead of sneaking up on people in the dark to putting on this hood and targeting a couple in the daylight and writing this message. And I would say that another challenge to the Zodiac hoax theory is the set of clues that we have found in comic books and literature, and looking at all of these things and how they fall into place, particularly if you look at the car door at Lake Berryessa that says "buy knife" that is written on there, and then "buy knife" is mentioned on the future Halloween card, and possibly a solution to the 340 cipher. And then we find that that comes to us from the Tim Holt comic books, where you can see the Wheel of Death, which ends on "buy gun," and then "buy knife" is right next to it, and there are four spots on the Wheel of Death. So, there are four spots on the Wheel of Death that are visible on the comic book cover, we should say. And then that is something that I find I can't really account for in the Zodiac hoax theory, unless that was just something that Hal Snook would have had to have designed from the beginning, that he would want to have three incidents that were taken he wanted to take credit for 3 murders that were committed by gunfire, and then one was committed by knife, or one incident. I mean, when I said murders there, I misspoke. We would mean incidents: Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs, Lake Berryessa, and the Paul Stein murder in Presidio Heights. One of those would have been planned to have been committed by knife, and the other 3 would have wanted to have been committed by gun. But the fact that all this matches up to these clues that people are finding in comic books and literature. And Mark Hewitt also said that there are a lot of Zodiac killer clues in the book The Secret Agent by Joseph Conrad. I hope to go through that one as well. But I would like to say that it's really showing that there is one mind that is behind all this. There is one set of design. There is one central figure. Or even if you're going to make the claim that one person is writing letters taking credit for murders that he did not commit, well, there's your link between all the crime scenes. One person is writing letters taking credit for a crime that occurred at Lake Herman Road and at Lake Berryessa and Blue Rock Springs and Presidio Heights. One person is connected to all of this. Therefore, why do you need the hoax theory when you could just say that there was a single perpetrator that committed all this? And it doesn't have to be Hal Snook. That was just a rebuttal to the Zodiac hoax theory that I had only very loosely heard about. But even if you're going to say that there's some reason why Hal Snook could not be the Zodiac killer, well then, I mean, why not any other single perpetrator? And I should also say another skeptical challenge. I am not 100% convinced that Hal Snook wrote the letters. I feel that a lot of the claims that have been put forward in that way are interpretive, and they're open to interpretation, especially the interpretation of so-called experts. And I think that physical evidence will give us much better answers to this mystery, such as DNA. And someone was just asking me about that. Like, is it possible that they'll extract physical DNA from the letters and then trace it back to somebody relative, like they did with the Golden State Killer, using the DNA markers, going back to the 1800s, perhaps finding a common relative, and then working forward until they get a match. Maybe we'll get some answers like that in the future. I sure hope so. I would love to see the day when we can put case closed on this. But in conclusion, I would like to say this is meant to provide some skepticism. All of the things that I'm genuinely curious about, or the concerns that I have. I really did not want to do this in a type of devil's advocate way, because I find that Thomas Henry Horn's presentation on the Zodiac Killer is very engaging, it's very thoughtful, and he's also done a lot of research and digging through the case file and the police reports. But is it possible that he is also perhaps jumping to certain conclusions with his theory? And I mean, you heard that Richard Grinnell is just disputing a very major, very important piece of the Zodiac hoax theory and providing an alternative to that. As we go through the book here, and we're only on part 6 with this one here, then maybe we'll find some other places in which we can say that there's a fact that we would like to dispute. So I do have concerns, and I do have some things that I'm not completely sold on. And as I said at the beginning, we would put this into 3 categories: yes, I believe it; no, I don't. And the third category, which is the most entertaining, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that I'm not convinced yet. And that's where I would like to leave it for there. I definitely will be going through the book more, and the next part will be part 7. If you're following along with the playlist, you should see part 5, then challenges to the Zodiac Killer hoax theory, the myth of the Zodiac Killer, and then you will see part 7. And thank you guys for listening to all of these. I will see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.